Oh my God!
Another horrific day, a detestable day. I'm absolutely sick to my stomach to see children who go to school armed with backpacks and pencils lose their lives.
Especially a school that size. How do you control it? We start with the Fox News alert. A 19-year-old expelled from that school is behind bars this morning after a school shooting spree leaves 17 dead in South Florida and more struggling for their lives in a nearby hospital.
The first victim has just been identified publicly as a football coach who witnesses say shielded students and died a hero. He jumped in front between the gunman and the kids and tried to save them.
Todd Pyro is live in Parkland, Florida, with a breaking update on this investigation. Todd.
Yes, Steve Ainsley, Brian, good morning. And throughout the course of horrible situations like this that we see all too often, you get stories of heroism like this individual, this football coach who, like you said, jumped in front of a hail of bullets to save his students. His name, Aaron Feis. He was an assistant football coach and security guard at the school. He was also a graduate of this school and is the first fatality to be identified. Meantime, just this morning, the killer taken to county jail, and overnight we learned brand new details about him. This after authorities swarm a mobile home park about 30 minutes away from here. A massive police presence reported overnight, sources saying it is in connection with the shooting. A neighbor in the area said police told him it was some kind of explosive at one of the homes. As for yesterday's nightmare, the pictures from inside the school, absolutely terrifying. Students trying to find cover under desks, shaking and crying, not knowing what's about to happen. The gunman mercilessly killing at least 17 innocent victims, setting off fire alarms, and then shooting those fleeing with an AR-15. Reports of him wearing a gas mask and having smoke bombs on him during this carnage, then trying to sneak out in the fleeing crowd before being arrested in a nearby neighborhood.
I'm still scared. Like I just have that image, like that sound of the gunshots right in my head. Like I just hear it like constantly. It was the most scariest experience of my life.
And with each passing hour, a picture of 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz becomes clearer. His adoptive mother died this past November, and he was living with a friend's family. Cruz was expelled from school for disciplinary reasons. One student said it was for fighting with his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, and that Cruz had been abusive to the girl. On social media, Cruz is seen with pictures of guns and knives, bragging about shooting animals. The Broward County Sheriff calling the post very disturbing. And many people described him as, quote, obsessed with guns. A former neighbor said police were called to his home multiple times, and he was seen shooting at a neighbor's chickens. Words like sketchy, weird, off, strange, troubled, and super stressed out all the time, used by multiple students to describe the killer. One student even told local media, and this is particularly chilling, that, quote, everyone predicted the shooting, with kids joking before yesterday that one day he would shoot up the school.
He was like shy, like with his lunch bag, but like he wouldn't talk a lot.
What was your take on it?
I mean, he was like that weird kid at school that you see, like walk around in school.
Described as a loner?
Yeah, like a loner.
And right now, the FBI is asking anybody from inside or outside the school to please share with them any photos, any videos, so that they can piece them together as part of their investigation, all as we try to answer this main question that we've been asking all morning long. We're going to continue to ask, why, if we knew so much about this killer, why wasn't this stopped?
Right. Thanks, Todd. And in some of the things that Todd outlined, and we've been discussing for the last hour, and you've been listening to for the last maybe 18 hours, is, okay, he's trouble. Don't bring a backpack to school. He gets kicked out. He tells another classmate, when he got to that school last year, he sat next to him during one of his shop classes. Reportedly, if this classmate's telling the truth, he said, you know, I was kicked out of 2 schools prior to that. The question is, for a shooter, if you're 18, turning 19, what's the responsibility of law enforcement once the education system says you're too scary or for whatever reason to be here? Where does law enforcement come in?
Well, so he was not allowed to bring a backpack, and there you can see he's still wearing the hospital gown after he was taken to the hospital after he was carted off. Apparently, after the shooting, he tried to blend in with the kids and got through the police, and they found him through surveillance video about an hour later. But regarding not being allowed on campus, that's one thing if he had a backpack. But the other thing is he had an AR rifle, and he apparently bought it legally. At this house he's staying at in Parkland, Florida, apparently the family he's staying with said, you can have the gun, but you're going to lock it up. But he had a key. But as Todd said, there were other warning signs, the social media, plus the fact that one of the mayors said on television that apparently they had been watching this guy over a year ago for mental health problems. He was at a mental health clinic being treated, and yet he fell through the cracks. Apparently he just stopped going.
Yeah, there were a lot of warning signs. His mother, his adoptive mother, died in November. I don't know what the state of her health was. Maybe she was sick.
She was sick for a while.
But the question is, as a mother, you know, if my child is showing these signs and then they are not going to their treatment facility, I'm going to probably look into that and push them to do that. Now, I don't know the details of what was going on in his personal life. But other students said he liked to kill animals, small little animals such as frogs, and he would post these disturbing, gruesome photos on his Instagram page. And we've always heard that's where it starts. If you can do something like this, or if you can mistreat an animal and you can kill an animal, that usually leads to something bad down the road. Yeah, there were warning signs. Ed Davis said the warning signs slipped through the cracks. He is the former Boston police chief. Listen.
This man was telegraphing his intent to do this. Some of the students who have been interviewed on camera say that he actually threatened to shoot up the school. That's a crime. It should be recognized as that and reported, and then people can take the right action to try to eliminate this threat. You need to take these things seriously, and unfortunately, this one fell through the cracks.
And you just wonder who else is out there, and then you got to get into, well, whether should you violate somebody's privacy? You know, I see this kid over in the trailer park. He's got a lot of guns, and he's got a gas mask, and he seems to have some body armor. I wonder if I should call the cops, or should I mind my own business? Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi says, don't mind your own business. She was on with us. She was on the channel yesterday.
When they're posting it on social media, they have followers. So kids who are out there, parents, you've got to monitor this stuff. And if you see it, take everything seriously. Take every threat seriously and report it to law enforcement. We would rather you do that and be wrong 99% of the time than have anything happen in this world. And these teens now are vocal on social media. They don't just pop up from anywhere. There are warning signs.
Remember, Adam Lanza was so into his video games. He was living in alternative reality.
Sandy Hook guy.
Sandy Hook guy. He killed 20. This guy killed 17. Hopefully that number won't rise. And I'm wondering if video games also play a role because it desensitizes you to actually killing people.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know about the video games, but we do know he was so big on social media where he posted these very disturbing images.
Bottom line is...
Which brings up the question, what about the social media companies? You know, I understand
what's their responsibility?
You can pretty much post anything you want to on there, but if something disturbing keeps popping up on somebody's feed, do something about it. I mean, this guy, Ainsley, as you were talking about, he posted these things with these guns and killing these squirrels and lizards and stuff like that. I mean, that's
he doesn't value life. He doesn't clearly value the lives of animals, but the lives of human beings.
Right.
You know, I remember I talked to my dad yesterday, and he said, Ainsley, he said, we work so hard to raise our kids, and these are teenagers. You've almost gotten them into college, and 17 families will never be the same. They worked so hard to get their kids to this level, to be good kids, and this one nut job, this one evil guy comes in and ruins it for all these families.
So listen to these numbers. Beginning with Columbine 19 years ago, believe it or not, more than 150,000 students, not counting these students, in those 3,000 plus, attending 170 primary or secondary schools, have experienced a shooting on campus. And now these kids are reliving what those kids already lived through. Watch.
He shot through my door. 3 in my classroom got hurt. I just saw blood everywhere.
I actually heard the gunshots. I heard at least 4, like boom, 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 boom.
People were running and screaming and pushing.
Hid in the tennis courts. Then we went to the locker room. We were in there for about 2.5 to 3 hours.
There was dead bodies everywhere.
We thought it was a fire drill, but we heard the shots beforehand. And I'm guessing he wanted everybody to come out.
One of my friends died, and
it hasn't hit me yet. In the hallway, I saw a big pile of blood, like kind of smeared, like if they were dragged away. I was praying to God, thinking that He could save us all and that we could make it out alive.
A day they will never forget. Keep in mind, it was 2:40 yesterday afternoon when somebody on the staff heard what they believed was gunfire. And so they pulled the alarm and they turned a code red lockdown. Apparently, simultaneously, this guy, the shooter, may have pulled the fire alarm, which meant even though you're locked down, you've got to get out of the building because there could be a fire. And so what happened? All those kids from all those classrooms, the doors flew open, and there he was with a gun.
He knew there would be chaos, and he would be able to disguise himself. There were heroes, though. We've talked this morning about Coach Aaron Faze. He died. We got word this morning that he did die in the hospital. He was jumping in front of students, according to some of the kids that were there and witnessed. There's his picture. He was employed as a security guard, did graduate from that high school in 1999, and then became the head coach of the JV football team as well.
Well, meanwhile, and was working security there, and I guess he was not able to carry a gun to shoot back. Here's what the president said, tweeted this out: "My prayers and condolences to the families of the victims of this terrible Florida shooting." By the way, the president's already called the sheriff, the senator, and Governor Rick Scott. "No child, teacher, or anyone else should ever feel unsafe in an American school," and especially there. I mean, the numbers are staggering to see that how safe this community was considered to be. It says that statistically, they're safer than 85% of the cities in the entire country. The safest city list compares safety of cities with a population of 25,000 or more.
Well, something went haywire yesterday, you know, and as we start to put the pieces together and you look at the anguish of the faces of these people.
The ashes on her forehead.
It was Ash Wednesday. Warning signs seem to have been missed. You look at the social media profile of this guy, that's a red flag. And then you hear these stories about how apparently there was a mental health issue. Apparently he had been treated, but just stopped going. Who knew about it? Well, his family did, but his mom died 3 months ago, and she was out of the picture, and he was on his own. People said he was depressed, but if your mom just died, you'd be depressed too.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do this.
You absolutely would not. Not a normal person would. Anyway.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, an expelled student wearing a gas mask and carrying an AR-15, the man we were just talking about, on a rampage, killed 17 in the school. Our next guest takes us inside the mind of a killer.
And as their state is stunned with grief, Florida's Governor Rick Scott and Florida Senator Marco Rubio will both appear on this program on this Thursday morning. Fox News alert 90 seconds ago, President Trump tweeted this on the Florida high school shooting. "So many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed, even expelled from school for bad and erratic behavior. Neighbors and classmates knew he was a big problem. Must always report such instances to authorities again and again," the president tweets.
And the president has even brought that up before when it came to the San Bernardino shooter. Everybody in the neighborhood knew there was a problem, but no one reported it. Here to weigh in with a look inside the mind of a teenage killer is a psychotherapist himself, works in the school system, Tom Kirsting. So Tom, you see this? We're looking on the outside saying, how could someone not have done this? Yeah, they took action. They kicked him out, but that's not good enough, is it?
No, it's not good enough. The problem is the ubiquity of the situation where we see this stuff so much. Take a kid. They're on social media constantly. They're exposed to violence. A lot of the students that are at that high school said that they sort of suspected that he would do something like this. So the warning signs were there, and I think what we need to do is really empower our students. If they see something, you hear the expression, see something, say something. But if they see something on social media or somebody reports something to them, they have to come to somebody at the school as a front line, and then we'll handle it from
According to a report, he was in therapy and stopped going a year ago. What should that therapist have done differently, if anything? And have you had patients that have acted like this, or you've seen signs that they might do something like this, and what do you do in that situation?
So if we have a situation like this, so the therapist, I mean, you'd like to think that the therapist was, if the therapist knew about this, would have reported it to the authorities. You have the right to breach confidentiality anytime there's a homicidal or suicidal ideation. So I've never really had anybody homicidal, but we've had situations, particularly at the school, where there's been certain posts and such that would suggest violence. So we then meet with the kid. Sometimes we'll bring in the police, and they'll do, they'll just investigate to make sure that this kid is not a danger to himself or others.
he looks just like the other kids because he's about their age, but he wasn't a student there.
Yeah.
I know your school where you're the therapist at. You know, there are a lot of doors, and there are a lot of kids going in. It's hard to stop somebody who looks just like everybody else. But have you ever heard an instance where somebody was banned from the campus with if they came on board with a backpack?
And that's the scary part, because I can tell you where I work. All right, we have like the security measures that we have are through the roof. I mean, you can't get in that door, you can't get in that door. There's cameras, there's Share 911, all these other things. But some situations are just not avoidable. I mean, this kid could sneak under the guise of looking like a current student and have, and have a backpack. And you've got 1,300 students there. Who's going to notice this? That security guard?
In a time in which a lot of teachers say I have to pull money for school supplies out of my pocket, there's not a lot of surplus. I get it. But we have a system here where you can't get in. I don't care if you're the most recognizable person on camera or a PA. You cannot get in without a pass, without your security.
And here's the issue.
Without your ID.
That's right.
You guys need that?
Absolutely. Like, so where we have it at the schools where I work, you can't get through that. If you're a former student and you don't have an appointment, they're not letting you in.
Right.
You come in, there's a camera, they scan you in. Now, I believe this individual, this occurred in the afternoon.
Right.
Yeah,
2:40.
2:30.
Yeah,
15 minutes before closing time.
I think that the more frightening element is if this was before, like early in the morning, let's say school starts at 7:30, you don't check every student walking into the building at 7:30 in the morning. So that's, I think, where, from a security perspective, where schools are going to have to start.
Do you have armed guards?
No, we don't have armed guards, but we have a great security supervisor.
What are they going to do, wrestle?
Yeah, I know. That's the thing.
It's ridiculous.
It's, prevention, but can't prevent it all.
All right.
Tom, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Overnight, the FBI scouring a mobile home connected to the accused shooter, and massive crime scene now needing to be combed through. A former deputy assistant director of the FBI's counterterrorism division joins us next with where this case goes from here. We are back with a Fox News alert. New video this morning out of Broward County, Florida, where the suspected gunman, who you see right there behind a horrifying school shooting, is now behind bars in jail.
The 19-year-old former student now facing 17 counts of premeditated murder.
Rebecca Vargas from our affiliate in South Florida is live at the jail in downtown Fort Lauderdale with the latest. Rebecca?
Yeah, at this hour, he has officially been booked, that suspect in this shooting, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz. Our camera's here as he arrived at the jail just about 2 hours ago. You can see him there in that video, arriving still wearing that hospital gown that he had been wearing all night long. Again, he was taken to the hospital to be checked out yesterday for about 45 minutes. Then he was brought to Broward County Sheriff's Office headquarters to be questioned. He has been there all night long. We're talking 12 hours of interrogation by both the FBI and homicide detectives. They are both working together, these agencies, investigating this terrible tragedy. And then this morning, he was brought here to the jail in Fort Lauderdale and has been booked. They are looking at any possible motive he may have had for this shooting. They're also looking at what he was doing in the days and the hours leading up to this shooting. They've also looked at his social media, his Instagram, his Facebook posts. The sheriff telling us they are disturbing, these posts. So now we are waiting to hear from authorities on what they may have learned in this 12-hour-long extensive interrogation process. But the good thing here is he is behind bars, and he is accused of 17 counts of premeditated murder. For now, we are live outside of the Broward County Jail in Fort Lauderdale. I'm Rebecca Vargas for Fox and Friends.
All right, Rebecca, thank you very much. Meanwhile, overnight, the FBI frantically searching for answers at a Florida home tied to the teen gunman accused of killing those 17 people at his former high school.
Here to weigh in on this and where the investigation goes from here is former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, Terry Turchi. Terry, thank you for being with us. What happens next?
You're welcome, Ainsley. Thank you. Well, the FBI is in its strength right here in the area of providing support to local law enforcement, who's obviously in charge of this case. But several things are going on. First of all, there's extensive crime scenes, obviously, that have to be done. And so the FBI's evidence response teams will deal with that. Doing these interviews, there's a couple kinds of interviews. As you mentioned, the subject interview, which was probably very carefully coordinated, and the FBI provided behavioral support and any kind of support it could provide before the interview actually occurred. as well as being a participant in the interview. And then there are literally hundreds and hundreds of interviews to do out in the field. And those kind of things the Bureau can bring a lot of manpower into and get it done, and then track and follow leads and make sure that those are all done, and then the results are reported. So all of that kind of service is brought in so that we get a quick picture of what happened here, and also a kind of a real rapid determination as to whether or not there might have been anybody else involved. Usually in these things they're not, but you've got to know, and this is how you do that.
Sure. Sometimes, Terry, you know, all this FBI and the investigators can do is look at the social media, look at the computer, look at cell phone records, stuff like that, because the gunman is dead. But in this case, he's alive, and he certainly could tell them why he did it. The big question is whether or not he's going to be cooperative.
Well, he could, and he may very well. I mean, it's not one of those cases where there's a mystery as to who did what, and so we'll just have to watch and wait. But many times people who do things like this, these terrible crimes, are interested in talking about them, because remember, part of the whole tone of the whole environment of these kind of people is that they want to have some sort of publicity in life. They want to matter in a big way, and that's why they get into this societal level violence. And so one of the ways of doing that is to sit down and talk about it afterwards. So hopefully he will, for not only easing the prosecuting burden, but we need to know as much as possible about what's in these people's minds, so that we at least learn as much as we can about this for the next incident that will inevitably occur.
Is this the foundation for an insanity defense? If he has psychological problems, history of violence, on some type of mood-altering drug, is this something that leads to insanity and gets him off for not getting the death penalty?
Well, Brian, all those things could possibly come into play, but insanity's a harder defense than it looks like most of the time. As long as you can show somebody knows right from wrong, even if they have a mental illness, they're going to be found guilty and have to suffer the consequences.
That's right. Also, the FBI is asking to those thousands of kids who were in that school yesterday, if you got any images, upload them to the FBI. Terry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Meanwhile, it is 7:30 here in New York City. Florida Governor Rick Scott has been in South Florida trying to comfort the grieving families. He's going to join us live with the very latest on the investigation. Well, this is a Fox News alert. It was 2:40 yesterday afternoon at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that a gunman came in and started shooting. By the time it was all over, 17 children and adults were dead.
Yeah, Florida's Governor Rick Scott, I understand, was in Tallahassee and then went down to South Florida where the shooting took place, and he joins us now this morning. Governor, we're all so sorry for what's happened in your state. I know you spent time at the hospital last night with some of the family members. Can you share some of the stories?
Sure. I mean, as you imagine, they're happy that in this case, that their children are alive. They're worried about them. One of them was still going through surgery. They're like me. They're mad. I mean, how can this be going on in our society? We know that something has to change here. We cannot continue to have this violence. We've got to keep our students safe. But at least at the hospital last night, everybody was optimistic that their children were going to be alive. You know, my prayers are with. You know, I can't imagine a family member losing a loved one. I have daughters. I have grandchildren. I can't imagine. I imagine parents this morning are saying to themselves, you know, should my child go to school today? And you know, are they going to be safe? And we're going to figure this out. We've got to figure out how to keep our kids safe in this state.
Governor, we had a number of 17. 17 have lost their lives. We just found out about the coach, the football coach, who did something you would expect somebody with the Navy SEAL training to do, and that's jump in the way of bullets to save students. But can you give us an idea of how many are in area hospitals and how many are in a life-threatening situation?
Well, the sheriff's office will be putting out more of that information. Last night at the hospital, everybody that I spoke to was optimistic. I spoke to the physicians there and the nurses. They were optimistic about the individuals at the hospitals, that they're going to be fine. But they're, as you know, some of these are in different hospitals. I was at North Broward General Hospital last night talking to families. So I hope that everybody that's in the hospital survives. But I mean, you know, we're going to do everything we can. I'm going to stay here as long as it takes. Make sure we have all the resources that we need. We are going to make sure that we in this state figure out how to stop violence at our schools.
Well, that's the big key. And I know you said a moment ago that the people you talked to yesterday, they're mad. You know, they want answers. Because, Governor, you know, it looks as if there were a lot of warning signs that were missed. Not only did he have a disturbing social media feed with creepy pictures on it and some really inappropriate passages that he had typed out, but also apparently for a while he was treated at a mental health facility and then stopped going.
Yeah, all of us have to figure out and talk about when we see something like this happening. You know, there's going to be a thorough investigation. We'll know what happened in this case. Hopefully we can take whatever happened here. We can't save the lives that we lost here, but we can do everything we can to make sure this doesn't happen again. I mean, you just can't imagine how a person can senselessly go shoot and kill another human being, probably somebody that they knew. How can anybody do something like this? I mean, I'm furious that this could happen anywhere.
Well, on top of that, a lot of people are wondering what the responsibility is if a public school kicks you out for disciplinary reasons, says something like you can't carry a backpack. Whose responsibility is this kid next? Should law enforcement be called by the school system? Look out for this guy. We're kicking him out because of violent reasons, if that is indeed the case.
Well, we're going to find out exactly what happened here. I've spoken to the superintendent. I've been talking to the sheriff. You know, I spoke with President Trump yesterday and Kristen Nielsen from Homeland Security. Spoken with the FBI. We're going to find out what happened here, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a real conversation about how we're going to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, he was 19 years old, so it's not like he goes to Child Protective Services if he loses his parents or into an orphanage. He's considered an adult at that point. Well, please keep us informed. Let us know. Are there any ideas that people have thrown your way of how we can prevent this from happening? I've heard you say several times you're going to look at different things to make sure this doesn't happen again, but any suggestions that you've heard so far?
Not to date, but I mean, not as of from last night to this morning. But I can tell you, we're going to figure this out. We're going to keep our kids safe. I want parents to wake up every day and say, my child is going to go to a safe school.
You've got to. I understand the Attorney General Pam Bondi said last night that apparently the state of Florida was going to pay for the funerals. Is that accurate?
I know it's what the Attorney General is working on. She also has victims advocates. She did the same thing after the Pulse attack. She brought down victim advocates. They were very, very helpful. Right. But I know the Attorney General will probably be putting out some additional information about the funerals.
Governor, I mean, you're at your best and sadly have too much practice at it in times of crisis, whether it's a natural disaster or a shooting. So right now, if you were to change something, it would be maybe empowering counselors and principals to pick out the bad boy or girl in that school that is a threat. Are you thinking about a mandate to all public schools in Florida immediately to reevaluate these discipline issues?
You know, Brian, we're going to find out exactly what precautions people took, and then we're going to find out what we can do to make sure this doesn't happen again. Superintendent Runcie is somebody I've been able to work with the last few years. We will figure this out. We have a school system that wants to do the right thing, and so we'll figure this out.
All right, Governor Rick Scott down in Broward County, Florida. Governor, thank you very much.
Thanks, Governor. All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Good morning.
That's right. Good morning. We are following some other news right this morning, so let's go ahead and get you caught up on that right now, starting with this. President Trump explicitly denounces domestic abuse amid questions over the White House's handling of allegations against former aide Rob Porter.
I am totally opposed to domestic violence of any kind. Everyone knows that, and it almost wouldn't even have to be said. So now you hear it, but you all know it.
Porter served as staff secretary until last week when abuse allegations from 2 ex-wives surfaced. The White House has faced questions about when they first learned of those allegations. Mitt Romney delaying his Utah Senate announcement today in the wake of yesterday's shooting in Florida. The 2008 Republican nominee for president tweeting this, quote, "As a father and grandfather, my heart aches for the victims of today's tragic events. My prayers go out to all of the families and loved ones affected by this senseless act of violence." He's expected to run for the seat being vacated by the retiring Orrin Hatch. The Senate could vote today on a bipartisan immigration deal. The measure would set aside $25 billion for President Trump's border wall and offer a path to citizenship over the next decade for 1.8 million Dreamers. No changes will be made to the diversity visa lottery program, Texas Senator Ted Cruz joins us live at 8:30 Eastern to discuss what's at stake. That's a look at your headlines, guys. I'm fighting a little cold. Sorry for.
That's okay.
I think everyone
Everybody
has, did, or is.
I know.
Thank you, Jillian.
All right, Jillian, 20 minutes now before the top of the hour, we move our way through. His state is mourning the deadliest school shooting in recent modern history. Senator Marco Rubio will join us live to tell us what he sees as he returns home.